Let's go! It's gonna be a football game tonight now, no doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to the Max as we continue on our 2016 NFL offseason analysis. This time looking at the rest of the AFC East. We did the Jets and the Bills on Monday, along with that double feature that shouldn't have been. And we're doing the Patriots and Dolphins here on this episode. And, of course, there's been a lot of movement with the NFL free agency about to start in a few days. And, of course, you know, guys have signed their franchise tenders. Some have been released. Some have been franchise tagged. And still awaiting word on that. And speaking of movement, we are without Randy as he finished up his Extra Life 24-hour marathon charity event. They raised $750 for charity, which is fantastic. I mean, I know they wanted to get to that $1,000, but man, $750 still a lot of money. You know, for two guys playing video games for 24 hours. So that's pretty awesome. But I do have Gary with me here, so not by myself.
Yeah, I'm here, hot and fresh out the kitchen. So, you know, maybe not rolling that body, but I've got every sports fan in here wishing.
Yeah.
You know.
We're going to hit the ignition to get away from
talking
about R. Kelly.
So, you know, not even R. Kelly. The song just popped in my head. Don't know why. But no, I'm glad, you know, it's a freaking weekend, baby. We're going to have some fun. And this is going to be a good podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a bummer we don't have our cohort in crime here, Randy. I mean, he, you know, is just the final piece that makes this puzzle work. But, you know, I think we're still going to have a good show and some good topics.
What do you think about the money he raised on his deal?
I think that's wonderful. I'm like you. I really wish he could have got the $1,000 mark. But, you know, this is their first year doing it. And with everything, you know, when you start something, you've got to, you know, grow and get it built up. And it's going to work. I know next year, I'm positive they're going to hit the $1,000. 2 years, 3 years from now, those guys are going to be getting more money than that for charity. And we
got to find something to do like that.
Yeah, we should. I mean, you know, I know me and Sean here do a wrestling podcast, and I don't know what you can do for 24 hours. Maybe we can put on an indie promotion. And
you know, I think they do every year. I think it's PW Ponderings does it. I don't know when. But this year, I'm going to make sure that we get our name in the hat for they do a 24 hours podcast. Like different people do podcasting, and they make up a 24-hour circuit. And last year, I think Larry did like 5 hours or something. So I want to I'm going to try to get in contact with him and see when they're doing it, if they're going to do it this year, to see if we can put our name in the hat to do a special W2M or something for 2 or 3 hours.
I'd love it. That'd be great.
Raise money for charity.
Definitely. I'm all for it, man. Get our name in that hat. You know, it's always nice to be able to give back and do something for the community that you live in, or even just to anybody. You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, man, I want to give back. I want to do something. I don't know. And I'm like, think about what's really important. And, I know it's great to give to other countries that are suffering, but, the American Red Cross is a big deal. They help so many people. In fact, in my area in December, there was a tornado that hit. It was an F4. Sadly, many people lost their lives, but the destruction was very heavy, and the Red Cross really helped out the people around this area. And they do it all the time, all year long with people around this nation. So I just think it's really important to give back, and I think it's a good deal. So I'm really proud for Randy. I'm proud of him. I think it's a great deal, and I can't wait to hear more from him.
For sure. So, we talked about Randy helping people. Well, these teams help the players make more money, or at least in theory. That's what you're hoping here. And one of the first people to get signed right after we did the podcast, we talked about the potential of it. But Sam Bradford, 2 years, $36 million for Sam Bradford. Seems like a lot.
It does, and it was kind of funny because I was looking at that and kind of chuckling to myself like, wow, the Eagles really screwed themselves over. But at the same point, I want to say this, listening to some other analysts talk about it, break down the contract, really the contract is in favor for the Eagles. They're not actually putting as much into him as you would think. In fact, they kind of did what I actually talked about on that podcast before they announced this. They gave him a 2-year deal, and in that 2-year deal, the first year is the heaviest part of it. The second year is very light, whereas if they decided, hey, we got us a new quarterback, or we found a way to get somebody we like over Sam Bradford, it would not hurt them that badly to cut him in that second year, or just let him ride it out. They wouldn't be overpaying. So it looks like a triumphant number for him, but it's really not as bad as you think. I think I'm trying to think the contract. I think $15 million of that may be signing bonus and some other incentives.
26 of it is in guarantees.
See, there you go. So it's it's a thing. I was a big fan of Sam Bradford. People say, Gary, you're making fun of Sam Bradford. You love the guy at the beginning. I really did, but man, he got injured again. And really, honestly, with some pretty decent receivers, he just did not look good. And I thought his backfield wasn't terrible. I just don't know. I'm a little bit lost on Sam Bradford. I thought he was one type of quarterback, and now I'm kind of reevaluating that. So it's weird.
Yeah, Mason Crosby signs a 4-year deal with the Packers, the kicker, obviously. He's been more hit than miss, but he's been dependable for the Packers. More than anything, $16.1 million and a $5 million signing bonus for Crosby. That'll make him 35 when he gets done, which is relatively young for a kicker. Sometimes we've seen a lot of these kickers go to like their 50s.
Yeah.
So.
But it's because they are special.
Not a lot of contact.
Yeah, exactly. They're specialized players that no contact. They do have risk of injury. They're just like anybody else, but that risk of injury is very low. And so you just got to be happy for guys that can make their career as long as some of these kickers do. And Mason Crosby, a smart move for the Packers. This guy, like you said, Sean, more of a hit than a miss at times. And I think, like when we talked about the Baltimore Ravens locking up Justin Tucker with a franchise tag, you got to make sure that you have a solid kicker in this league. We saw Pittsburgh really struggle at the beginning of the year when they had Josh Scobie, a guy they thought was a lock. So, it really, games are lost in this league now by 2 points, 3 points, and, especially with the new rules in play.
Speaking of Josh Scobie, he got signed to a 1-year deal with the Saints.
But does it surprise you? Not really for me. I mean, the Saints have kind of had
listen, before the Pittsburgh fiasco, he was really dependable for the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you're right.
I mean, he was. That was the problem, was that last year in Jacksonville was when he started having some issues. Then Pittsburgh picks him up. He has a tire fire problems. And then the Saints are getting him another try. Hopefully this offseason, Gives them some time to look, not have to think about the things that happened during the season, and you know.
Yeah, I'm not a kicker. I don't believe I have any personal friends who've been kickers. But from what I've learned from hearing and just kind of studying a little bit, part of their game is mental, and it's a major part at times because if they just kind of psych themselves out, if they overcompensate, undercompensate, these guys
Sort of
will
almost like a
totally mess
pitcher.
up. You're exactly right. Yeah, a pitcher is a great example, and we've seen plenty of pitchers go through slumps, and even you want to talk about batters as well. It's kind of both sides of the fence in baseball. They just let mental mistakes happen, and then the guy has a streak of terrible games. So I think Josh could be okay. I think he was a great kicker at one time. I think he can return to that. He's blessed that he's in a dome now. So we know at least 8 of his games are going to be indoors. That's a positive for him, I'm sure. I think that it'll help his confidence as well.
Joe Flacco gets more money, $40 million signing bonus to restructure his contract and get an extension so that they can have a little bit more cap room there.
And this is nothing out of the ordinary. We see teams do this all the time. In fact, from my personal experience, following the Dallas Cowboys very closely, almost every year Tony Romo would do the same thing. So this is great, but that's kind of a normal thing.
We pretty much knew this was happening, but Alex Mack voids his contract and is testing free agency, the center for the Browns. One of the good parts of that offensive line.
Yeah, you can't blame the guy. I think he realizes this team is really under construction. He doesn't even really know what's going to be happening in the future. I think really what he's hoping is that maybe some team that does have a shot in the playoffs, a team that's closer than the Cleveland Browns are, is something that I think he's hoping for and kind of taking a look at.
Bryce McCain goes to the Titans 2 years, leaving the Dolphins to go to Tennessee.
Wow, that's kind of interesting. And I think that it's a good thing for the Titans, and kind of interesting to me that he made that move. I thought he was going to stay in Miami.
Well, I mean, they obviously need secondary help. That was one of their problems last year. The Titans also need secondary help, so this is a great for Tennessee. He's a dependable corner. He had a few issues last year. He got beat bad a couple times, but so did the rest of that secondary, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think also they come up with Rashad Johnson and some of the other guys that were kind of stepping up there. He was expendable, so.
Yeah.
A guy that we kind of thought during the season he wouldn't be playing for the Falcons, Roddy White, cut by the team.
In a way it's a surprise, and then in another way it is not a surprise. His season last year was awful. He's dealt with injuries quite a bit in his career. I think really what the Atlanta Falcons are looking at here is they really want a dependable number 2, and really Roddy White's not it right now. I think they've kind of figured that out. I think they're going to try to look in free agency in the draft somewhere to get a solid number 2 receiver for their team. I think it'll make not only Julio Jones better and be available on a more regular
Hardy
basis.
is a decent number 3, but you're right. They need to find a number 2. I mean,
yeah.
They let Hankerson go too during the season, so it's going to be interesting.
Very, very interesting, and I'm kind of curious who this is going to be. I don't think that they need to go out in free agency and pick up a guy like Colston, but they really need to get them a young player that can really help Julio Jones.
Brandon LaFell, Scott Chandler, cut by the Patriots. I mean, no surprise the Patriots are cutting people. It's what they do. Brandon LaFell did not have the greatest of years. When he was needed to be relied on, he did not come up well for Brady. And Scott Chandler had issues he did score a few touchdowns, but he also had issues of dropping the ball at times.
Yeah, and like you said, Sean, this is a regular thing. Even if Scott Chandler was better, when it comes to the cap, they don't care. It's kind of funny. It's kind of an old school thing in a way, but then again, it's not. These guys are just expendable to the Patriots, and they gladly go and look up the places and find somebody. And Scott Chandler's still a good player in this league, and whoever finds him. Like Pittsburgh Steelers is a guy, our team that we've been looking to see what kind of tight end they'd get, and I think Scott Chandler would have fit just fine with Big Ben.
I would definitely go get Hunter Henry if I'm the Steelers if he falls here. That guy is going to be a player.
Oh, definitely. And if you can get him, that's the question.
Right. So the Houston Texans release Arian Foster. We kind of knew this was going to happen. We kind of sort of talked about it. Already hearing rumblings of the Cowboys being interested. I don't know why. He has been injury prone just about as bad as McFadden. Or McFadden was. I don't know.
It's a hope and a wish. If that's the case, let's just take it as fact, even if it's not. I think that they would be offering him a contract that is very low. It's a contract to keep them safe on the salary cap, like we've seen them do with Rolando McClain. In fact, they did this with Greg Hardy last year. 1-year deal that really does not hurt them if they have to let him go. It's just a tryout basis, and you can do the contract that way. And I think Arian Foster, if he truly wants to play in Dallas, he'll sign it. If he doesn't, he'll go to another team that may be willing to pay him more money. I just don't know what team in this league is silly enough to pay that guy a lot of money with all the injuries he's had over his career.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will not end, sadly, for him. Mm-hmm. He'll keep having injuries. Brandon Carr. We kind of already heard this during the season with Brandon Carr. Cowboys are expected to release Brandon Carr. He's been kind of hit or miss. I'd say more on the hit side. When you got Scandrick coming back, you hope he doesn't have another big injury. The thing is, you don't know what's going to happen with Mo Claiborne, if he's going to leave or he's going to stay. And that's an issue. And then you're sitting there looking for corner again. I don't know that I want Byron Jones. I want Byron Jones at that safety spot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Byron Jones is just fine at safety, and it's a big deal when he's available at safety. So I look at this situation. I think Claiborne will probably be gone. I don't expect him to re-sign with the Dallas Cowboys. Carr, on the other hand, I could imagine them finding a way to making a deal and seeing what they can do. But, that's not a guarantee. I really think that this year Dallas is really going to be searching out for more talent. Scandrick's great. They found some other corners that they kind of like but aren't really proven. So we'll have to kind of follow this story more. But, Carr is a guy that I think is an asset. But is he a major loss if he finds his way to another team? I would not say too terribly.
Romo has apparently decided to do the plate in his clavicle after we talked about him shaving down parts of it and all this other stuff. I think this is the better decision.
Are you sure? I just heard tonight that he was shaving it down.
Lord.
I don't know.
They need to figure this out with Romo.
Yeah, that's so funny because I just turned on the 10 o'clock news. Romo's going to shave it down to prevent.
Seriously, that just needs to stop being a story until he's going into surgery right now.
I know. You know what? I think what they're trying to do, and I think what Tony Romo's trying to do, is find a way to get the collarbone into the shape that he can actually take hits and not re-injure it. I think that's the biggest deal right now. They're trying to find a way to keep this guy upright, especially if the rumors are true. Just this past week, we've heard Jerry Jones apparently talked to Gil Brandt and told him personally Dallas will not draft a quarterback in the first round this year. And if that's the truth, this is why, because they, for some reason, believe that they can get this thing fixed with Tony Romo, and he's going to be okay next year. I don't know.
And apparently there's a few mock drafts that are thinking that the Titans may not go with Bosa at number 1, and that Bosa could drop to number 4 because they're expecting a team to go in front of the Cowboys. This is why I think Jerry messed up completely by telling Gilbrandt that we're not doing it, because you could let somebody get in front of you that is going to take a quarterback, and maybe Bosa falls to you. You know, instead of being in that spot, and
I think it is in a way, and in a way, I'm almost wondering how much of a smokescreen this is, because I just don't know. It's so hard. There's so many stories that come out before the draft that are smoke screens that are trying
mind games.
Yeah, mind games. I mean, so you really don't know what's fact and what's not. But I mean, I'm okay with Jerry Jones with that mindset. For me personally, not going after quarterback right away because he is in a situation where he does have a starting quarterback day one. Any quarterback would come in, which Gilbrandt himself, I heard an interview with him saying this exact thing, and that is you go draft a quarterback, he's not going to be ready to help your team until about 2019. He's not going to be a starting quarterback with the skills that you're seeing other quarterbacks have, and probably until 2019, whereas you can go get a Bosa who's ready day one, you get him in camp, he's ready to rock and roll this year. So I think that's kind of the mindset we have here. But I don't know. I'm still wondering if Jerry's saying that so he can go get the darling that he wants at quarterback.
You never know with Mr. Jones. He kind of lives in his own little bubble sometimes. Until he talks to his son, then he kind of has to come out of the bubble.
Yeah.
So Lamar Miller apparently is going to be offered a $5 million per year deal. It seems to indicate he's going to take it, but the guy we had on for the Dolphins interview seemed to kind of just have this feeling of, well, if he doesn't take it, you guys just move on at this point. You're going to keep offering him money. I don't remember Avio being too bad. So I think Miller, you obviously want to keep him, but you don't want to overpay for him either.
Exactly, and if the word going around is that his price tag eventually will be about $7 million, because teams will fight for him. There are teams, like you just mentioned, Sean. You talked about the Dallas Cowboys, one Arian Foster. They're really looking for a running back. It's a big deal to them this year. Going in the draft somewhere.
I really think the Cowboys would be smart if they took Elliott.
Yeah, they would be smart. The question is how would they be able to get him? That's the big key.
I've heard people say you can take it. Gurley proved that it's not bad to take somebody at that early stage. You take him at 4. I mean, I know you need other needs. Obviously, they're more important.
Yeah, I mean, but, I would agree if you wouldn't have a talent like a Bosa sitting in your face. You can't.
I mean, if you got a quarterback looking at you, and then some other guys, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point though, looking at Lamar Miller, I think he's a player that other teams are going to value. They're going to say, this guy is going to help, add a piece to our team. We can overpay a little bit if we want to. Whereas the Dolphins are kind of in the situation the Dallas Cowboys were with DeMarco Murray, saying, hey, this is what we're willing to pay you because of these reasons, but, go test the waters.
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins was very quick, and I mean very quick, to sign his franchise tag. Of course, he's not dumb. I think he knows, I may not get $20 million for this year if I don't sign this tag. So I think he did the smart thing, honestly. And I think signing that means you're getting $19, $20 million guaranteed. You go and keep fighting, you may not get offered that money. Mm-hmm. And then what do you do?
I agree, and there are so many players that hold out on the franchise tag. They don't like it, but let's be honest. I mean, the money you get on those franchise tags is beautiful. I mean, it's really good money, and I know a lot of players don't like it because they feel like if they were to get injured that year, other teams wouldn't pay him later on if they got released. And I get that point, but I mean, it's a yin and yang thing, and I don't blame Kirk Cousins. I think this is a smart deal. He's betting on himself, and that's a good thing. When a player gets motivated, we see some positive things usually come out of it, and Kirk Cousins is a guy that proved that, hey, he was a good starting quarterback in this league in the year, this last year. So let's see if he can do it again.
All right, let's go through some quick ones here. Brandon Tate, the first Bengal of the 3 receivers to get signed. The one guy that Wyatt, I remember vividly saying he did not want to see back.
For some reason, Marvin Lewis likes him. That team likes him.
Justin Tucker signs his franchise tag. I don't think it's a surprise there. Cordy Glenn signs his. I don't think that's a surprise there. The Bills offensive lineman. Jermaine Johnson of the Rams signs his as well. And now the other corner is out there in free agency, and he may not be back. T.O. and Marvin Harrison had a little spat, with T.O. whining about not being first ballot, and then Harrison kind of got back at him, and T.O.'s like, I don't need a yellow jacket to validate me. Yeah, of course. No, you're complaining about not being first ballot, but then you're just going to be like, oh, I don't need it at all. What a total, Doesn't that seem like those people that complain that they really want something? They go, no, you can't. Oh, well, I didn't need it in the first place.
Yeah.
Then why are you going at? Then why are you saying anything if you didn't need it?
Yeah. You're right. He wants it. He wants it badly. He didn't get it, so he's got kind of offended. But T.O., you have to understand why you didn't get that. I think you're a first ballot guy. If you just have better behavior, your behavior kind of messed you over. That's your own fault.
Marvin Harrison got the one ring, so
yeah, that's fair. But like I said, I love Marvin Harrison for what he's done. But I still find other receivers that are not in the Hall of Fame right now that I think probably could even go before Marvin Harrison.
So Armani Bryant suspended for the first 4 games of the season for violating the performance-enhancing substance policy. He's a former 7th-round pick. He played in 14 games last year. He started in 2 of them. So he's not... he did have 5.5 sacks last year. Even though many people will say that sacks is one of the most overrated stats in all of football. And he also has an indictment on 2 felony counts of drug possession, where he was stopped and arrested on Christmas morning in Ohio. And they don't say, they found marijuana in the car along with a concealed handgun, and he didn't have a permit. You know what? Again, just look, you're 25, you make dumb choices when you're 25. But
Yeah, kind of goes back to what we talked about last week with the young man from Houston, the Houston receiver, and Jalen Strong. And you just question their decision-making and why they do it. But then you look back and you think, oh, they're so young, and where most guys their age are making mistakes out there, they're not under the microscope like an NFL player is. Whereas, a guy that's their age and is a insurance adjuster or, just a guy that works at a bakery, he gets pulled over, it's a little slap on the hand, but not everybody cares. Whereas it's a big deal, all that. So you got to feel bad for these guys, but they really need to pay attention and really listen to what these veterans are telling them. And, make sure when you go to these rookie symposiums and you hear these veterans talk, listen to them. They tell you not to get in trouble. Don't get in trouble. And that's your fault, and it's nobody else's.
Rams are treating Case Keenum like he is the starting QB right now. So.
Well, you treat royalty like royalty, right? What can
did
you
I
say?
know that was going to be your answer?
I mean, you got a Houston Cougar quarterback at your disposal. Can't get any better than that. Uh, I'm kidding. Case Keenum is a guy that I've kind of followed. I think he's not a bad player. I'm a little surprised he did not really prove to anyone that he
Well, you
was.
have a man crush on Case Keenum.
I've just followed his career from college. I just think a lot of him. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he proved enough to me last year to make me think that he's a starting quarterback at this point in his career. I look at him as a good fill-in guy. So I don't know. I mean, if Jeff Fisher feels like this guy is the guy, hey, let him try it. You never know. Kurt Warner was a guy, bagging groceries. People would have said, "What was that?" And it took a guy getting injured for him to come out and start, one of the biggest offensive, teams in NFL history. So, you never know. Case Keenum may actually be the guy. We just don't believe in him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want him to succeed. I think, for anybody else that's coming out of those smaller schools that a lot of, teams don't look at for quarterback, it would be a good thing for him. It'd be great. I'd love to see it, So
Mm-hmm.
I hope for his sake that it does happen. Hey, at least, with the Rams, at least they're in a good spot where they can sort of do that. So
Yeah. Is he married? Do you have any idea? I don't know if he's married. I just, it's one of those things where, you're talking about a guy that's going to be the face of the franchise in a way. Not the complete face, because there's Todd Gurley, other guys that are really going to be on the billboards in L.A., and they're going to be making their presence known. L.A. is, a tough town to play in, and so they're going to have to sell themselves very hard to that public. And, the reason I asked about his wife, because, if she's beautiful, then he's going to have a better chance of being the starting quarterback, because him showing up to things with her would be great for him.
Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like Tom Brady and Giselle. They don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry about where they go.
Yeah, but if she looks like a donkey, then they're going to just be like, so.
That's true. Very true. I don't want to get into.
It's a shallow place, is what I'm pointing out.
It is a shallow, But it's true. Honestly, the thing is, though, it's true. I mean, it's not like, I think people that think that looks still matter. They very much do. As much as we want to say that they don't, and we've all progressed as society and all that stuff, but when you're talking about media and making those appearances and stuff, you look good and you look presentable to people, and they're gonna want you to be the face as opposed to.
And I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I just want to point out the reason I'm making this a big deal, and people are like, good God, why are you making this? It's because, I live in a market, which is Dallas, and the Dallas Cowboys are definitely national news. Anytime that Jason Witten farts, ESPN's tweeting out, that happened. So that's the same way it's going to be happening with that franchise. The Rams are going to now get that luxury of having, anytime something happens, if Todd Gurley has Chinese food, you're going to hear about it on ESPN. You're going to hear about it on the Twitter and every other social media, because it's a major market. And it is very important to have the presence there, to have a good relationship with those guys in the media. That's why you see just the different things that some of these bigger market guys have to do. Look at Eli Manning. Eli Manning has had to do things to be presentable, to showcase that he's a luxurious guy, a guy that takes care of business. Because he's in a major market. That's my whole point with the Rams, is they can't pretend like they're in St. Louis anymore, because they're not. They've got to now up their game. They've got to have guys that are quality, that this LA crowd is going to want to come and see, because it's going to be tough to sell out a building if you're showing up with guys that really no one cares about. That's just my thought process on it. They've got to find a way to sell tickets and keep people coming to those games.
Oh, you're right. They do. So, continue, speaking of continuing, we're going to continue on with our 2016 NFL offseason analysis here, and we're going to look at the Patriots first. This was very brief. Jeff was kind of busy that day. He'd actually pulled over from traffic to kind of talk to me. Jeff Burkhart. He's been on the podcast before when we did these for the up to the coming this season, but so he didn't talk to me a lot. But and to be fair to him, it's not like the Patriots just have all these glaring issues either. So they were a game away from being in the Super Bowl last year. We know what the Patriots do. We know what the Patriots are. So I mean, it's I can't really. He doesn't go into these long diatribes. In fact, sometimes he gives me one-word answers. But so everybody has their own way of answering things, and just wanted to preface that here before we get into it. So here we go. About 9 minutes or so of Jeff Burkhart talking about his New England Patriots. All right, so we're here doing the first interview for the podcast tonight, and with me is New England Patriots fan Jeff Burkhart. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, it would be nice if there wasn't so much traffic, but figured the call was more important, so I pulled off the road for a little bit.
Well, I appreciate you doing this for us, even though you had to pull off from the traffic. So, I just apparently saw that looks like the NFL is still trying to get back at Tom Brady with this whole Deflategate nonsense.
Yeah, it's getting crazy. I was reading something today that that he's going to end up winning this appeal too, or whatever. So,
I mean, the judge apparently said there was compelling evidence or whatever. Just, do you really think it seems so silly. Like, after you lost it the first time, I get it's a pride thing possibly for Goodell, but it's like, shouldn't you just drop it?
I would think so, because I know the last time that Goodell brought it up to court, he didn't have it in the right color folder. It was some crazy story like that, and the judge kind of like laughed at it or something, so they had to redo it again. I don't know what that was all about, but I just thought that was funny.
There's a colored folder you have to have? Wow.
Yeah, it was something to do with like a weird colored folder. I don't know what the issue was, but
that's certainly different at least. So, I mean, obviously you fell short of the goal last year, losing to the eventual champions.
Yeah.
But overall, would you call it a good season, considering you dodged the bullet with Brady? You got to have him for the whole year. I mean, you had quite a few injuries to overcome too.
Yeah, there was a lot of injuries, and there was a big problem with the offensive line. That's why they got back Sarnecchia back as their coach after he had retired 2 years ago. He made big differences when he was on the team, so at least for now, I can see a bright light at that. And there's a few guys on the offensive line they should get rid of, like namely Marcus Cannon, because he just wasn't good all season. And then they just cut a few other players, like Chandler, and LaSalle's gone. And
Wow, they cut
receiver.
Chandler. Wow.
Yeah.
And then Mayo retired.
Well, I don't know if they cut him or they didn't renew the contract. I'm not sure exactly, but I know he's gone. And Times or Tims, I'm not good with his name, but he's another receiver that they let go. So they freed up like $3.5 million of cap space. And then Brady just signed a 2-year extension. So,
do you think Brady will really play for those 10 years that he keeps talking about?
I think if he stays healthy, he will. I know he doesn't want to end up the way that Favre did, looking so bad at the end of his career. I mean, that's probably every quarterback's nightmare, but I'm sure if he's healthy, I think he'll keep going as long as he can, or until he starts getting to the point where he's not good.
Right. So if you're looking at now this off-season, you already mentioned the offensive line is a big deal. Any other needs that you see?
Definitely a deep threat receiver yet. I mean, they can't rely on like Gronk and Edelman all the time. I mean, they're good, but they definitely need somebody who could fill those old shoes of Randy Moss when he was there. And they never really had that sense.
Yeah,
So that you can go down the field, That's really, I think, really the only thing besides filling up some holes in the O-line again. But
do you think that they need maybe someone at running back that can kind of offset Lewis, or you think they're okay with Blunt? And
I think they're all okay with what they got for the running back. I wouldn't worry about that.
what about, obviously now you've got some issues there on the defensive side with Mayo retiring and Chandler not being renewed for at least for now.
Yeah.
Do you think, what would you say is the bigger need? Is it that linebacker?
Yeah, but I think they'd be able to find something probably, I would say, in free agency. A good pickup there for that.
Have they mentioned anyone at all, or?
Nothing that I've seen yet. I mean, everybody's always, throwing up names of different players who are suddenly free agents, but there's nothing really that New England has really eyed at the moment that I know of.
Yeah, because, I'm looking at there's nobody really, that's, totally glaring as far as, who your free agents are other than Blunt himself, which I don't
Yeah,
know
this
that
might be.
anybody's. Go ahead, sorry.
This might be one of those situations where they wait till the very end, like they tend to do on a lot of stuff.
Right. You think they bring back LaFell, or?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it seemed like he had so many problems last year just catching the ball.
Yeah.
It seemed like more of an issue, but the one thing I'm seeing is a lot of your corners. Obviously some of them are, they're backups to the backups or whatever, but you have quite a few in the secondary that are some kind of free agent, whether it's restricted or unrestricted. Looks like you probably need some secondary help here with either Tavon Wilson, Terrell Brown, being unrestricted. Is that more of a draft thing, or are you looking to bring those guys back?
I see them going more for the draft for spots like that.
Well, so if you're looking at the offseason and you're saying we accomplished this, this, and this, what would be your would you what would need to happen for that to be a successful offseason for you?
I don't know. That's kind of a hard one for me to answer. I guess if they got they got some, the O-line figured out, definitely. I'd even be happy with that, just so if Brady has more time to throw. At least he's got guys he can still throw to, but he's got to get that time, and that's what he didn't have last time. He was on his back more than he's been in a long time. So,
do you think it's the fact that just you had so many injuries with the offensive line, or is it just the personnel?
I think it was that. I
enough?
think it was coaching. I think coaching had a lot to do with it, but on top of that, it was the injuries.
Right. So you think you had the right guys, you just didn't. It was just a combination of the outside factors on that.
Yeah, and there's really only one guy on the offensive line that I think they should think about getting rid of, and that was Cannon.
Yeah.
And he was a big talk in a lot of the Patriots groups of how bad he was looking, even when he was healthy or whatever. So.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. Finally got a chance to talk to you. I know we planned it in the past and it hasn't worked out. So.
All right. Well, hopefully you get home safe and get through this traffic.
I sure will. Thanks a lot, Sean.
No problem. Thank you. All right. Well, that was Jeff talking about his Patriots. what did you think, Gary? I think obviously offensive line was a huge, huge issue for the Patriots last year.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's one of those that I think it really affected their year. It's part of the reason they didn't make the next level. They had a great shot at it. I mean, they're the New England Patriots. They've found ways to mask some of those weaknesses, but you could just tell that Tom Brady was not given the time that he needed for most of that season, and it's a situation where if they could just find a way to shore up, just a couple spots on it, they may be, back to the glory that they once were. So, I mean, I think it is a big issue, looking at, other places on this team. You could say, well, they need cornerbacks, they need some other spots, to kind of be filled. But, right now that's the most important.
Definitely. The receiver is obviously going to be a thing for them. They've got to find that reliable receiver, and the Colts are expected to release Andre Johnson. That could be somebody that might work with Brady if, he still wants to stick around. Any thoughts on, do you think they go draft with that? We've never really seen them go draft much with that. Or you think they try to find somebody?
I'll be honest with you. I think if they go draft, it's going to be in the late rounds. You're going to see a 6th, 7th round pick on a receiver. If they feel like it's an impressive guy that kind of fell in the draft. I don't expect them to draft anywhere high for a guy that's at least in the receiving core. I don't. I think Andre Johnson's a guy. I mean, there's other receivers I'm sure will be available that they may take a peek at. Let's be honest, though. Looking at Belichick and his history with wide receivers, they've just never really honestly signed big-name guys. I mean, they got Randy Moss at the end of his career, trying to rejuvenate it, but it just never worked out. He
still worked for them, though.
No. But look at the other receivers that they've had that have not been big names that have worked for them and went other places and did nothing. I think Welker was one of those guys that was very special to their team. Now you have, Julian Edelman, who's kind of the new Wes Welker, who's very important to that team. But besides that, they don't have any big-time number one receivers that just really blow you out of the water. I just don't think it's going to be a priority. I think Belichick's just going to kind of go by what he thinks and not put a priority in it. I think he's going to do okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you expect there. With, I think, linebacker with Mayo retiring and some other issues there, you kind of got to look at it from that perspective. I mean, they're not... Obviously, he mentioned... we already talked about some of the guys that they're dropping here as my screen is deciding it wants to freak out. But... I did discuss what the heck is happening? I did not ask for you to do this to me, computer. Thank you. You have to love when things just decide to have a mind of their own.
Yeah.
That's always awesome. But Blunt comes up for being a unrestricted free agent. Steven Jackson, obviously, he's on his last legs. He probably shouldn't have played anyway. And I think James. you still have James White signed, so you're okay there. But Blunt is their workhorse, and I don't know. I don't see a lot of people trying to really go after him. And then we even saw him do that funny thing where he went to the Steelers and then somehow got the Steelers to drop him. And, he winds up back with the Patriots. So.
Yeah, and winning a Super Bowl that year as well, So, that's why I kind of wonder how much he's motivated to move on to another team. He's already done that. He's kind of seen where that put him. I would be surprised to see him suit up in a different place. I think he really wants to stay with the Patriots. I think he feels at home there. So I think they'll work out a deal. I do. Maybe I could be completely wrong, but I could see him saying, I made that mistake once, I'm not doing it again.
I think Ryan Wendell's a guy at center you kind of look at and say they probably want to try to bring him back because you can't draft everybody at that position. At the offensive line, everybody's gonna be trying to go for offensive line at that point. As I mentioned to him, you got some safety and corner issues you might want to look at here. Obviously, backups other than Terrell Brown, who I think he was okay last year. But overall, they're still going to be the Patriots, and you got to have faith in Belichick. He knows what he's doing at this point. Anything else you want to say on the Patriots?
Not really, because let's be honest. I mean, this is the same formula they've done for years. They really kind of found guys out of obscurity. Their drafts have been really good. They've done an excellent job in getting young talent, even if it's depth. And then, really just kind of filled those holes, based on, some veterans or some, guys from other people's practice squads and things like that. So I think they're going to do fine. I'm not expecting any kind of fall off yet. I mean, they still got so many guys that are coming back from last year. And I think if they can add some important pieces, they'll be just as good as they were.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, Brady stays healthy, and those receivers he doesn't go through the receiver rut that he went through last season. He will probably be okay. So we move on now to someone that has not been on the podcast before. He is a newbie to our Wrestling to the Max group, and he also is a big football fan. He's a Miami Dolphins fan, in fact, living in New Jersey, which you'll hear him say you don't find that too often. You don't find Miami Dolphins fans, period, too often, that aren't guys that are fair weather as soon as that team starts to lose. Obviously, living here, I can tell you for sure that happens. But he goes on talking. I talk to him about the coaches, the coaching carousel, all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a very interesting, almost 21-minute interview here with Aaron. So take a listen. All right, I'm here with Aaron Earlie, and he is a Miami Dolphins fan. How long you been a fan of the Dolphins?
I've been a Dolphins fan since the late 90s O.J. McDuffie days, playing Madden with Dan Marino.
All right, so you're definitely not one of those fair weather Dolphin fans that.
Nope, I'm a New Jersey Dolphins fan. You won't find many of us.
Certainly not. I mean, it's hard enough just to find Miami Dolphins fans down here. So, I mean, I can attest to the people just all of a sudden do not care as soon as they don't do anything down here in Miami. Sometimes can be very bad sports town. But so looking at this 2015 season, I mean, I watched a ton of their games. It was one of the teams that I was assigned throughout the season when we did the podcast, and telling you, just the big deal was obviously the coaching carousel that went on with this team, from Joe Philbin to Dan Campbell. Then you fire the offensive coordinator. Then now you have Adam Gase. So I'm guessing you're feeling like now the Dolphins have the right coach.
In all honesty, I never blamed it on Joe Philbin. I blamed it on just bad spending, because you put the wrong people in the wrong places. Mike Wallace, I loved him to death, shouldn't have been there. I blame more so on Ireland. He had some good draft picks, but for the most part, they were all horrible. Deion Jordan, just to name a few. When you have that negativeness at the top, when you have Ross, who's not really doing anything of value but spending money, the people that's been working their tails off, they're not feeling that residual welcoming. Cameron Wake should be getting God knows how much money, but it is what it is. You can't blame the coaching staff when you guys are going out there night in and night out, practicing, busting your butts, and then on Sundays you come in and lay a dud.
That's a different way to look at it. Certainly, it always seems like people just want to blame the coach, and you don't hear a lot of blame the player. So that's kind of refreshing, actually.
I honestly think Joe Philbin he was just the guy that everyone can scapegoat. For the most part, he didn't really do anything wrong. He just never did anything right, And that was probably the issue with a lot of people had with Joe Philbin. A lot of the times it was defense didn't hold the fourth quarter down. We settled for a field goal instead of a touchdown. If 2014, if Green Bay and Detroit changes, we're in the playoffs. In 2015, if Juwan James doesn't get hurt, who knows? We're in the playoffs. That's a lot of things that could have happened with Joe Philbin as our coach. But we still have to look at the guys, the Joes instead of the X's and O's.
But if you're saying that he inherently didn't do anything right, then isn't that wrong then? If he's not,
I didn't say he didn't do anything right. I might have said that, but he does a lot of things just status quo.
Okay,
He tries to make the football decision and not make the crazy chance. He's not like Les Miles. He's not a gunslinger, chance taker, riverboat, Ron Rivera type of person. He's more of a, I think this is the right thing to do kind of guy.
Yeah, certainly not the command. Did you like Dan Campbell?
I thought Dan Campbell was a little extra. I liked what he did for the players, but at the same time, your coach isn't on the field for you. He can get you all hyped and riled up, but when it hits the fan, what are you going to do about it? You guys are out there to give your 100% all game, and now if you're getting blown out, don't give up now. Your coach got you all riled up. Now you're ready to quit. So it did nothing for me. I was never the rah-rah, Pete Carroll kind of coach kind of guy. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, and certainly, Campbell had his guys, his other coaches that were kind of the ones telling him the things to do and stuff like that. It didn't necessarily always seem like Dan Campbell was the guy kind of controlling things.
Yeah, he had no control, and most importantly, a lot of people might blame the offensive line for the Dolphins' struggles. The tight ends, and he's a tight ends coach, were god-awful. And I love Jordan Cameron as a Brown. I love Deion Sims last year as a backup behind Clay. They did nothing this year. I don't blame players. I'm a very, very forthright person, and it's about the game. And what happens in the game happens in the game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But those guys hardly showed up. Jordan Cameron is a borderline Pro Bowler, and what did he have, 500 yards this season?
Yeah, he dropped a lot of balls, is what I noticed. But
I wouldn't have
go ahead, sorry.
I said I wouldn't have threw it to him. Block. We need your help. Our offensive line.
But with the Browns, he was doing just fine catching and everything. How much of that is Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback, and how much of that is Jordan Cameron?
I watched Jarvis Landry catch balls out of the wazoo, and I watch him drop balls right in his breadbasket. When it comes to a quarterback, it's about putting the ball in a position where you can catch it. These guys are always in positions where they can catch it. Ryan might not be perfect, but I think Ryan does a phenomenal job, in my opinion. He doesn't really do much wrong except for what the coaches tell him. And it's more so execution, getting the ball out a little quicker. But how can you get it out when it's 30 people on you as soon as you hike the ball? So the receivers know where the ball is going. They just got to catch the ball.
Yeah, and Jarvis Landry certainly did a lot of that last year. He was his favorite target anywhere on the field, sometimes probably to the detriment of the team because he'd be looking for
I
him.
agree. But that's what happens when you stand out and actually participate. I give Devontae Parker a little bit of credit coming at the tail end of the season. Kenny Stills for the deep routes and getting open. But who was open in the flats? Who was open in the hitch routes? These guys got to do more than just run deep patterns. And we know that's not his strength. So come on now. We got to do better in the 10 yards.
So, one of the things, obviously, they took out Bill Lazor, and they figured, okay, Ryan Tannehill's complaining that the offense is too scripted, that he needed to have a little bit of say-so in the offense. It didn't seem like the team really got that much better. And now you bring on a guy that is a quarterback's coach. Look what he did with Jay Cutler last year. Look what he did with Peyton Manning. So you must feel much better about Ryan Tannehill going into 2016.
Yes and no. The no is this. How many different offensive coordinators is this guy going to have? He was a college receiver. He's learning a little too much sometimes. And, too much of a good thing is a bad thing also. Personally, I think Bill Lazor had a different detriment to the team. I look at it as the Philadelphia Eagles. Watch them from the last couple seasons with Chip Kelly and see how they burn out. The defense burns out. The offense burns out. Practice is a little too weary on their legs. I've seen the same thing happen with the Dolphins, and I think Ryan was able to do his job as a quarterback, but everyone else is burnt out. And they were burnt out by the first game of the season this year. So the Redskins almost took it to them.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Jarvis Landry with the punt return having to save him. So you look at now to me the guys that stick out. Obviously, there isn't a huge amount of guys that I would say because you already sent Bryce McCain somewhere else.
Yep.
So the two guys that obviously stand out to me, and they were two of your standout players last year, Lamar Miller and Rashad Matthews, who really came on kind of out of nowhere and became that second receiver to Landry, and then he got hurt, and you could really see how that affected Tannehill until kind of Devontae Parker was going to be able to come in and help him out. So you definitely think, and these are guys that aren't making a lot right now, but there's going to be people coming for him, especially Lamar Miller, and Lamar Miller wants to get paid. Do you think that they both deserve that money that they want?
Lamar Miller is in a bind because he's a running back. And running backs are not a commodity right now. So if Miami's going to give him $5 million and no one else is going to give him a substantial amount more, he might just be better off staying and being a star and being comfortable in a situation where he's going to be successful. However, we do have a new offensive coordinator, so he has to do what's best for him, first and foremost. When it comes to Matthews, I loved him since Hard Knocks. The guy's been just he's tough as nails. He's the guy that you're gonna see him no matter what. And he has to just continue to grow as a player from a maturity standpoint because he likes to show I'm better than this. And he did it on the field last year, and they can't deny that. The problem is Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Matthews, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs. It's not enough balls to go around, So are you going to be the TO guy, or are you going to just recognize that you can grow and you can go? And that's what I think he needs to do. I think he needs to go, and I think Miami needs to recognize that we might be able to get Armand Benz back, someone who can fill that 4th position. It's plenty of options at receiver. And he's a quality guy. He might want to just take his ball and run.
Yeah, a point there. He could definitely. I'm sure he will get offers from other teams that are needing that number 2 or even a number 1, depending on what they consider for him. But so you look at the other side of things, and definitely you hear a lot more about Cameron Wake, Olivier Vernon. Dominican Sue kind of had some growing pains. He came on more towards. Did I hear you? You hear me? Hello? Aaron, you there? Here, hold on. Hello? Oh, I might have lost. Might be one of those things where you can't hear me. Well, call is going pretty good. Oh, here we go. He's calling back. Hello?
Hey, Sean, I think we got disconnected.
Yeah, it was one of those. I was talking, you couldn't hear me. So,
Nope.
so I was getting.
You were talking about Kansas State.
Yeah, I was calling. I guess. Yeah, talking about the defense here. Do you obviously secondary had issues, and Ndamukong Suh kind of took a while to get going. Do you feel like this defense definitely has players in for next year, but where do you think they're lacking?
They're lacking in linebacker. No gripes about that. We all know it's been that way for years. I don't think they had a decent linebacker since Carlos Dansby and Joey Porter. When it comes to their secondary, Delmas gets hurt every year. Rashad Jones is a great player, but he's kind of erratic. He's in a lot of different places, and I don't know if we can rely on him as the back of the defense protection. I know he can shut down a run in no time, and he can make plays, and he can be spectacular. I personally wish they would have kept Jimmy Wilson. Jimmy Wilson was doing a lot in that slot, coming in that fourth corner or that third safety, whatever they needed him to do, he would always make plays. But then Brent Grimes he had a tough year. And part of that tough year was he was on number one receivers all game. He had no help all game. And I don't know why people assume that a starting cornerback is supposed to stop the number one receiver every single time. Is honestly illogical in the age of a receiver. It's just some guys just do it and do it to a great degree. I don't really have a problem with that. As long as you're not giving up 300 yards to someone, I think who scorched him last year just terribly. Brandon Marshall, what he had, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Right.
But you as a coach have to recognize, put someone over the top, let's change up coverage. However, he still has to come out and play. Put your big boy pants on and recognize that Brandon Marshall is a 6'4", 230-pound receiver, and you have to go to work. Get your lunch bell and let's go. On the other side, they had a lot of young guys. These guys haven't done anything in 2-3 years. It's just bad draft picks, And I give them all credit in the world for coming out and trying, but that's a dire need. And they need to get someone I would trade or get a free agent. We need someone established. Go get Cromartie. That's what I would do. But they're not going to do that, of course.
What do you think about Luis Delmas, and who's unrestricted right now? He's making at least $2.5 million. He probably would ask for more. You got a Kelvin Shepard, a Quentin Coples. Are those guys that you're keeping, or you try to replace them?
If you can get them for the cheap, like a Kelvin Shepard and a Quentin Coples, you can keep those guys because they're high energy guys and they can make plays. When it comes to Delmas, I don't trust his health. He have 3 straight years with the torn ACL?
Right.
I can't trust that. And he's a quality player, but he's not a game changer. He's not a difference maker. It's not really worth it. I wish him the best. I would never say, hey, cut bait, fire this guy, get rid of him. But when it comes down to it, I think we can find better on the free market. I wouldn't draft a safety. I don't see that need as pressing as right guard or right guard, left guard, which is most concerning, linebacker and a cornerback. But when it comes to safety, you can plug in that hole. I think, what's his name, Walt Aiken, he was doing pretty fine as a backup. Not as good as Delmas, of course, but he did pretty good back there. We just have to stay in coverage because the pass rush wasn't getting there last year. Sue getting triple teamed, Cameron Wake going down, Olivier Vernon had a great year, but on the other side, it was we didn't get anything. So we have to recognize that pass rush is key. That's the way the Giants won the Super Bowl against Brady. It works. That's the way the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. That's the way the Broncos won the Super Bowl. So we have the foundation in place of a great defense. Now the back end has to handle theirs because they're going to try to get the ball off quick. That's the only way you're going to beat this team.
So looking at the draft. So you mentioned a couple positions there. Looking at the draft, which one do you think you go with on that first pick?
You got a brand new quarterback who's about to be in a brand new system, and we know the interior line is depleted. Fix it now. I don't care if you spend all 7 draft picks on offensive alignment. You fix that. I personally would just go right guard because Jason Fox was just horrible. I think he might have been left guard. Not even sure. But either one of those guys were just horrible. I would also get us a quick linebacker, someone who can handle Gronk or tight ends who are honestly killing us because the middle of the field we can't stop it. And if the middle of the field gets open, now Brent Grimes has to single cover every time, and we know how that's going to go as he gets older. I don't want Miko to get mad at me, though.
No, but you're right. I mean, it was just the sea parting in the middle of the field most of the time against the Dolphins. If you're go ahead.
And look what Brady did. Brady just simply recognized you guys can cover all these receivers that are probably trash anyway. We'll just dump it off to the running back or the tight end because your linebackers can't cover in space. Mm. So it was a detriment to us because we could have beaten the Patriots, probably not the first game, but the second game around. Carlos Williams destroyed us with the Buffalo Bills. You have to take advantage over matchups. And if our linebackers can't get to the second level of the offense, we're done. We have to stop these people in the backfield because they're going to triple team Sue. So if Sue is getting triple teamed, that means the linebacker is going to have a free lane. Make something happen.
Yeah, you're right. So when you look at this offseason and you say it was a great offseason because this, and this happened.
It was a great offseason because it's another year. Remove the stench of Philbin, no excuses. It's a great offseason because we addressed our dire need of linebacker and offensive guard. It was another good year offseason because Juwan James is back and healthy, Brandon Albert is back and healthy, Cam Wake is back and healthy, and Olivier Vernon is good to go. Our edges are covered, and that's where we'll be successful.
All right, sir. Well, thank you, Aaron. You pretty much answered all our questions, and you did it very well.
No problem.
We'll be doing another one of these, going around to the teams when the draft is over. We'll be looking at the players and everything. So I'll for sure be getting in touch with you then. But thank you again, sir.
No problem, Sean. I'll give you a Roman Reigns highlight next April. All right.
All right. I'll be waiting for that Roman Reigns highlight. Certainly. Gary, I mean, lots to digest here. Lots that Aaron and I talked about. As I kind of mentioned, there's not a whole lot about this team. The guys that are kind of on free agency or guys that are kind of on the downtrend. We've already seen McCain go somewhere. Maybe you're trying to get a Copels back or whatever, but your two main targets are Rashad Matthews and Lamar Miller. I think Aaron might be right in that Rashad might wind up asking for too much, and they might just say, we're not going to pay that for you. But what do you think? Is he someone that you really go after? Do you really need all 4 of your wide receivers to really be that good?
I look at it and I think to myself, okay, you got Landry, your number one guy, and of course you got a core group here, which Matthews is one of those guys. And I really just kind of evaluate, if I sign him, what am I losing? That's the big key. What's the cost? What am I paying? And if it takes away from my pass rush, my pass protection.
Yeah, because Olivier Vernon was given the transition tag, so.
Yeah, and then Cameron Wake's situation. I mean, there's a lot here to digest, and Matthews could be on that chopping block even though they don't want to do it. And I mean, is that going to hurt them? I think to an extent, because I think he was one of their more capable guys, and I think he's a receiver that, even though Tannehill may not be the best quarterback, if Matthews is in the vicinity, he's going to get the ball. So
I thought that was interesting. He gave a lot of credit to Tannehill. He seemed to like Tannehill. You are not a big fan of Tannehill, so what do you say to a Dolphins fan that was watching him all year and thinks that he's really good?
Well, I'm not going to understand that. I mean, you go through that when you're a fan of a team. I mean, it's just the way it works. You hope for the best. You look at all the positives and you go with it. I mean, I guarantee you, I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, and I am a Romo-sexual, and there's a lot of people out there right now listening to the podcast who say that Tony Romo's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Why do you like him? They would say that.
They say that, they're idiots.
Well, I agree, but I'm just saying that there's some people out there who say it's just personal opinions. I don't know. I just think that there's people out there who, really like their quarterbacks, and that's fine. I think, Tannehill is just not the worst quarterback in this league. He's not. Let's be honest. He's a decent quarterback. I got him coined around average.
Would you say he's better than Bradford?
From what we saw last year, yes. I think if Bradford was healthy and could play all year long, I would renege on that. I think I would say that Bradford is a little bit better, but just a little bit. I think he's just 1 to 2 spots ahead of Tannehill if he's healthy all year.
I think with Tannehill, obviously it showed all the coaching changes, all of the offensive coordinator changes, all that stuff that's been going on with him. Aaron brought it up. I think I brought it up many times. How many times are they going to change personnel for the guy? And to the point where maybe it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And he has no excuses. You're working with Adam Gase, who made wonders out of Jay Cutler last year. He made wonders out of, Peyton Manning that year that he was there with John Fox. I mean, so I don't think you have any excuses if Ryan Tannehill comes in and they can't figure something out for him in this year. Obviously, it depends on the health of your receivers and your core there and what happens with the running back situation and all that. But I just think that the excuses are about to run out for,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, I think that they put a lot into him. They've invested quite a bit of money in Tannehill. But, the project has not worked out so well. It's not terrible, like I said before, but it's not the quarterback I think that they were expecting to get out of their investment. So unless he can improve, I could definitely see his future possibly not being in Miami.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I just think that right now you've got the best situation for him, and if he doesn't pan out, you can't blame the guys. I think defensively, you found out a lot of what Olivier Vernon was last year. You found out how much Cameron Wake and Ndamukong Suh helped because Vernon was a beast over there on that right side. So you definitely made the moves there. I think definitely what Aaron said, linebacker was a key problem. So was obviously secondary head issues. I mean, it felt like the Red Sea just parted when they went through the middle of the field with the Dolphins. They're going to have to correct that. Misi's good. He's not great. And some of the other, they have to figure out something with the linebacker. I think in the draft or free agency, you got to bring somebody in there.
Definitely, and I think linebacker is a spot that, really Miami felt like that they were decent at last year. I think they felt like they had the guys in place that could at least do the job. And they found themselves in some bad situations. It was not hard to run on the Dolphins. And that was kind of a surprise to me. I really felt that the Dolphins' defense was going to be much improved, that they were going to do just fine. And then, injuries and a few other things taking place kind of affected that. So, but this year, I mean, I still don't think they've fallen off too far, and it's going to be interesting. But if they can add some linebacker depth, and of course, you did mention also defensive back depth. I mean, the Dolphins are going to be in a lot better situation. That was really where they were, and their Achilles heel was last year.
Very true. Well, anything else you want to say on the Miami Dolphins here? They definitely are a team that they were worth the hype last year. They definitely had the team that you thought if they all get it together, they definitely should have been able to contend. But injuries and just things not working out for the team, just it came out the way it did. Anything else you want to say on the Dolphins here?
I think the Dolphins kind of came into this past year with some great hype, and I thought that it was kind of deserved. And then when we got into the season, some things took place. I felt like, well, this isn't exactly what they were expecting or wanting, but it just kind of put them in that place of, they can't help but what they are. And what they were was a below-average team. And now I think they have the potential to be better than that. They were last place in their division this past year. I think if they can make some improvements here, like we were just talking about, improve the defense, add some pieces, retain those important guys that are out there on free agency from your team, and maybe add other guys out of free agency, I think this Dolphins team could be a contender. I really do. I think that they're not that far away from being a contender. I may not be sold on their quarterback, but we've seen worse, or just about as good quarterbacks win a Super Bowl. So I don't think that that's going to be your biggest fear. I think if they can just kind of get that defense in order and, of course, get that offense going in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly. So, well, that does it for another division in the books. We're going to round out the AFC next week while looking at, I know for sure we've got guys for the Colts. He'll be on the Monday podcast, Mr. James Foncannon, that you may have heard on our Wrestling to the Max podcast. He's very big on his Colts. And, of course, we will have, I think we're going to have another guy from another wrestling podcast, Jimmy Christopher, talking about his Tennessee Titans from that Raw Reaction podcast. He knows a lot about his Titans, so they'll both be the subject of the Monday show, and then it's kind of up in the air. I'll have to see if I can get Jacob for Houston, or maybe I find somebody else for the Texans, and we got to get going on finding that Jacksonville Jaguars fan for sure. And then we'll be moving on to the NFC after next week. So as we inch ever closer to free agency, obviously, and the draft. And I forgot to say it at the beginning, but I want to say now, always thankful to be partnered with Last Word on Sports. They help us out so much, putting us on the page there. We have our own little section there for the podcast as well. So that's always a great thing that they give us. And I just want to say we're appreciative of it. Of course, we had Ben Kerr on the last show talking about the Buffalo Bills. So hopefully we can get more of those guys. We had Jarrett Middleton on talking about the Chiefs. So we'll see how that goes. And, of course, the WTO Network. That I know we show a lot, but it is a great thing that exists. I mean, you can get Randy's Backlog Busting Project podcast on there. You can go rate and review them and tell them how great it was they did the Extra Life thing for charity. Of course, if you're a wrestling fan, we got 4 wrestling podcasts that all offer different things. You got the big head honcho, the headliner, our Wrestling Max podcast that pretty much gives you everything we can possibly do in 3 hours in wrestling. Reviewing all those American wrestling TV shows and New Japan, everything. To a retro review wrestling podcast and Wrestling Unwrapped, to one-man show wrestling podcast, to 2 friends just talking wrestling and the Running Wild podcast. And, of course, video games, this show, which, of course, would be great if you rate and review this show as well so we can continue to gain traction so that when we enter into next season, we're already gaining more fans and everything. And, of course, Things changed a little bit, of course, with the name change. There's only one Twitter for all the podcasts that are not the Wrestling to the Max podcast. And Wrestling and Wrath has their own podcast as well. But out of the video games and football now have one Twitter. Follow the @WTM Network, and you'll see me just tweeting about football or tweeting about video games or whatever else is going on that's not wrestling related will be on that Twitter. So you can follow that. And of course, Facebook.com/WTM Network. You can go like the page, which helps us out a lot as well. It tells you whenever any of the podcasts are going live, you feel like an inkling to listen to one of them live, you can right there. So, anything I missed here, Gary?
No, it sounds like you got it all. And, like you said, we kind of shield WTM Network a lot. But, the positive thing about subscribing is the fact that it's always available for you on your player. You have all the podcasts we do. You're not searching. You're not having to look it up. Or did those guys have a podcast last night? You just update your player. You look at it, and it tells you right there, hey, this is available. Go check out this show. So, it's something simple. Go subscribe.
For sure. All right. Well, until Monday night, Tuesday morning, where we will be talking about the Colts and Titans, and of course whatever else has been going on in the NFL, National Football League news, we will be covering it on the next Football to the Max. See you guys later. Have a good weekend.